You know, we should get one of these things. Get my damn aggression out.
There's good reason for Bernie Sanders to be feeling aggravated these days.
Louisville, thank you!
For starters, the self-described democratic socialist has to convince more moderate Democrats, like many voters in Kentucky, that they're invited to join his political revolution.
Coal miners are not my enemy. Workers in the fossil fuel industry are not my enemy. Climate change is our enemy.
Sanders actually came really close in the Kentucky primary 4 years ago, and he did pretty well in Pennsylvania too. He'll have to do that again if he wants to hold off centrist good old boy Joe Biden. But Bernie's right flank isn't his only problem now. There are a lot of candidates pushing Sanders-style progressive platforms. Much of your message is very similar to what you said in 2016.
And what I said in 1981 when I was mayor of Burlington.
For 30 years, exactly, yeah. And it's all on video. How is your campaign different this time?
It is different in a number of ways. 4 years ago, I was trying to say to the American people, you know what? Healthcare is a human right. We need to move toward Medicare for all. And people would say, oh, Bernie, it's a radical idea. Well, today, the American people said, you know what? Bernie wasn't crazy. He was actually right.
If the party and the American people are catching on now, did you miss your moment in 2016?
No, I don't think so. I think we're in a very good place. I think the message that we are fighting for, the ideas that we are fighting for, are ideas that are resonating with the working families of this country.
In Kentucky, Sanders reasserted his progressive credentials with his version of a Green New Deal, which would effectively end the use of fossil fuels by 2030. But it would also cost $16 trillion over 10 years.
I've always liked what Bernie had to say. The only thing that I'm a bit concerned about is how he would pay for all the projects that he's proposing.
Do you think that the way that he explains the cost of the programs right now, is he able to pay for them in your mind or no?
You know, it's one of those things I'd have to see it all in black and white.
How do you convince people in Kentucky to get on board with your Green New Deal, where it's going to cost $16 trillion and you have union workers here, there are some coal miners? How do you convince those people that this is a realistic plan?
Well, it's not just the Green New Deal. Right now, here in Kentucky, which is a struggling state, let's be honest about it, a lot of low-wage workers here. You have a coal industry, which for a variety of reasons is struggling. I mean, I think the way to address that issue is to bring forth an agenda that speaks to working people, whether they're white or they're black or Latino, whatever they may be.
One of the workers that I talked to today at the CWA event that you stopped by said he's worried about the cost. What do you say to someone like that?
What I say about it is that we're going to pay for it. We're going to pay for it. And before we even get to the cost of it, what you have to talk about is what does inaction mean? The truth is, it is an expensive proposition. I won't deny that for a second. But we pay for that in a number of ways. For example, do most Americans think we should be giving hundreds of billions of dollars a year in tax breaks and subsidies to an industry which is destroying the planet? I don't. We're going to end that. And when the federal government begins producing an enormous amount of electricity through sustainable energy, wind and solar, the federal government will be making substantial sums of money, which will help us pay for the cost. When we put millions of people to work in decent paying jobs, they're going to be paying taxes, which help us pay for the cost of this. But I start off with the premise, Liz, that we have no choice in this matter.
He's also tweaked his Medicare for All plan to make it more palatable to the labor movement, hoping to win over powerful union bosses in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania.
Now, some of you may have read that just last week, we issued the strongest, most comprehensive pro-union program in the history of this country.
And it may be working. In Pittsburgh, Sanders won the backing of the United Electrical, Radio, and Machine Workers of America.
A motion would be in order to endorse the candidacy of Bernie Sanders for President of the United States. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Approved.
The problem for Sanders is that this time, none of these moves are his alone. And there's one candidate who's using his playbook especially well.
You and Senator Elizabeth Warren have a lot of similar positions on issues. Why should someone vote for you over her?
Well, that's a decision that someone is going to have to make. I stand with the working class. Throughout my life, I've taken on Wall Street, the insurance companies, the drug companies, the fossil fuel industry.
She's done a lot of that, too.
Well, that's fine. And people will make their... Elizabeth happens to be a friend of mine. I've known Elizabeth
Right.
for over 20 years.
But when do you have to stand up and say, my plan about X, Y, and Z is better than hers? I mean, how do you win over these Democratic voters in
Well,
this
we're
primary
winning them
process?
over every day. I mean, that's what I do.
So you won't directly criticize any of her policies?
It's not just Elizabeth. That's not what I think. That's not what I do. I mean, there will be a time and a place, obviously, where we'll...
When is that?
Well, that's a media question.
Yeah, but you're
No,
not at the
that's
top
not
of
what
the
the
pack
American...
right now.
The American people are not coming up to me. The American people are saying, Bernie, how are you going to implement your Medicare for all
I've
single
heard
payer?
that somebody did ask you recently, though, what's the difference between you and Elizabeth Warren? Why should I vote for you?
I mean, what people want to know is what I stand for, and people can make that decision.